teach our classes again. What's really cool is like we went into the same school 6 months later, and we walked in to do a teacher training, and all the teachers stood up and started clapping. And we were like, whoa, what happened? And they said, you've turned our most toxic classroom into the most empathetic, respectful kids of the entire school. So we want to replicate this with all the other grade levels. So at that moment, it was an indescribable feeling. It was like, this thing that I've spent months and months, I've quit my job, I've been on no money, and I've spent months building this program to try to create a behavioral shift in kids. And it worked. It worked. And suddenly, I felt my power, but I also felt this responsibility that I had to get this out at scale to as many kids as I could. And I think every founder, at some point, purpose-driven founder, feels like this responsibility that you've created this thing that's so powerful, but not everyone needs to be able to get access to it. So, that's why I was on stage at the Bombay Stock Exchange, culminating this crazy 6-week accelerator and trying to raise a seed round for my company. So I do my rehearsal pitch. It's just like the mentors in the room, and I'm completely exhausted. I just like finish it, and I'm just like waiting like for the feedback that'll help me do this well the next day. I'm waiting, and there's silence and blank faces. Finally, one of the mentors, she looks at my slide, and she pushes up her glasses, and she's just like, what are those slides? Like, what is that font that you used? And there's no animations between the slides, or there's actually no animations anywhere on your deck. Really, it looks like you spent no time on this. Like, I feel like my 10-year-old could have done this better. I'm like, okay, and I'm waiting for more feedback on my business model, or on anything, no other feedback. So I go home, and I'm devastated. And I'm like, if people can't see or hear me or understand what I'm trying to do, what am I doing here? I might as well close up shop and move back to the US. And so I do. So I do my demo day at complete low energy, and I leave India. And when I left, I was leaving behind my venture, I was leaving behind my brand, but more importantly, I was leaving behind my identity. And I was leaving behind the expectations that I had placed on myself in building this venture, and the expectations that the startup ecosystem had placed on me. So you could call this a complete ego death. So I go to California, where my family is now living, and a few months later, I'm just sitting at the kitchen table, and I open my laptop, and there's actually an email from the biggest corporation in India, Tata, who has an ed tech company that reaches into pretty much all across the country. And they say, Nilima, the work that you've been doing is truly revolutionary, and we want to license your content, and we want to distribute it to every single town and city in which we operate. Wow. And so I'm like, I'm nothing. I've left behind everything. I'm I'm living at home, and I get this email, and this sigh just passes through me. And it's like relief. It's not like woohoo, it's like, yeah, that's what I was trying to do. That was my vision all along. Of course, right? But what happened in between, right? So I realized that, I partner with them. They license my content to reach 15,000 classrooms across India, which is 600,000 students. And what I realized is this is something that I did in less than 3 years with a team of 3 people, a little bit of capital from friends and family, but without any real connections in a foreign country and no precedent of anyone having done sex ed at scale in this country. And so I achieved a scale that's not been achieved by governments, by private sector corporations, or by NGOs. So how did I do this and what just happened here? I realized that I had been following a feminine leadership paradigm inside a masculine ecosystem. And that's what I call goddess leadership. Or if you don't vibe with goddess, you can also think of it as purpose-driven leadership. So I went back and I went through my journey and I said, why was that so stressful? And I realized that I operated differently, and these are the keys that I'm going to share with you right now, is what I discovered from my journey. So number one key, which I was unaware of when I was going through it, which I discovered later, which is that my vision chose me. I didn't choose my vision chose me. So I was a channel or a steward for this to be birthed through me. So there's actually 2 different ways that people operate. You could tactically say, okay, I'm going to do real estate, I'm going to do crypto, I'm going to start a bakery, I'm going to start a tech venture. Which one's the quickest, most lucrative, right? Or you could be driven by a force greater than you, like a strong emotion or an urge or a creative impulse, where you're like, I have to do this. So these are actually 2 completely diametrically opposed ways of starting a venture. And in my experience later on, I realized like a lot of women are starting from the creative impulse side of it. So my vision chose me, and it was up to me to steward this and be in integrity to what wanted to come through me. So my major insight here was anchoring first in my vision, and my unique ability to carry it out was fundamental to my success. So after I first got the idea, I built the whole product, right? Over the cups of chai, 2 people, living room. But then after that, I hit the market and I started going through accelerators. And that's when you receive all of this feedback, both from the market and from the startup ecosystem. So you're gonna have all of these mentors telling you, change your business model, try doing it like this, change your funding amount, why don't you do this? Or even customers necessarily aren't gonna want it or get it or align with it immediately. And so that's where I got a wall of no's. And I got feedback like, why are you even doing this in schools? Why don't you just turn it into like a computer game or something? And at each turn, I had to decide, like, is this an integrity to my vision or is it not? Is it useful feedback or is it not useful feedback? And there's so many times when I could have made the wrong decision, but I came back and I was like, no, but my vision wants to be distribution through ed tech partners in the school in a group setting in order for the behavioral shift to occur. I'm like, it can't occur, the shift can't occur if it's not a group setting, and the distribution channels won't work unless it's through these sort of partners, right? So I had it figured out in my head, and I had to stay true to that plan. Number 2, so if number 1 is the feminine side of my learnings, number 2 is the masculine side of my learnings. So I had to create a strong container and invite other people along. So basically there's a bridge, like your vision can be like gender equality for everybody, right? So imagine if I go into a school and I'm like, let's create gender equality for India. They're gonna be like, we have 500 other problems before we tackle this huge vision, right? So I had to be very, very tactical about what is that bridge so that other people can join me in my vision, right? So what's the immediate pain point facing this customer, or what's the immediate thing that this investor can connect to and they understand? So when you're building a container can be a product, a service, a program, or it can even be a fundraise. A container is basically anything where you're trying to invite other people along and there's an energy exchange. Like they're paying for it or they're investing in it. So when you're creating a container, basically there has to be, so like I was saying, there has to be a bridge. So it's like, what have they heard about this topic before? Leading with that, leading with the pain point. Oh, so not starting with, let's create gender equality, but starting with, wow, you're having a really hard time managing your students when you're trying to achieve your teaching objectives. Have you thought about sex ed, right? And the main learning from creating a container is holding it firmly and letting others join you. So there's always a balance between, yeah, actually that is our pain point. Like, can you come and like come up with a new punishment system? Like it could be anything. There's multiple solutions to the pain point, right? So it's like you still offer the same thing, but it's about how you invite other people in. Number 3, I let myself be seen and heard fully to become a magnet for values-aligned people. So this one, I'm going to actually play a little game with you right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a few words on the screen, and I just want you to tell me any words that come to mind when you see these words, or any feelings that are invoked. And there's no right or wrong. I'm not like trying to lead you to anything. I get a feel, I see patterns when I do this in groups, but I actually want to know how you feel when I say these words. Pitching. Selling. Pushing it out and going hard. Convincing a customer. Converting a customer. Telling someone what he wants to hear. What feelings are invoked in you?
Success.
Okay.
Pressure.
Pressure.
Business.
Business.
Trepidation.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I just felt like, well, with pushing it out, going harder, like,
And then telling someone what they want to hear, like what immediately comes up for me is manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
But I also, part of me also got excited, like converting a customer, because it's exciting.
Yeah.
A lot of burnout. Everything put together.
It feels very much as you know, it's your agenda rather than flipping around and being more problem solving. It's like, this is what I need versus trying to engaging with someone to solve their problem.
Okay, great. I'm going to put up another set of words. Being yourself. Letting yourself be seen and heard. Letting customers come to you where there's natural fit. Letting investors find you where there's respect. Letting investors stay far away where there isn't. How did those words feel?
How it should be.
Comfortable.
Exactly. I was like,
Comforting.
yeah.
Less pressure.
Authentic.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too.
This is soft.
I like felt everyone's side like woo. That felt good. Okay, so basically, this is the difference between pushing and receiving. And so this is there's 2 energies that are in every single human, male, female, which is masculine and feminine energy. It's present in everyone, and we use both of these all the time, but they function differently, okay? So masculine energy is left brain, it's logical, it's competitive, it's assertive, it's data driven. So it takes all of the external inputs and it creates a decision based on that. So you can see it's driven by ego or status. In that, it's driven by the external hierarchies and the way that society functions. It's driven by personality. So it's out to in. It's externally validated. Our feminine side is correlated with right brain, so it's collaborative, imaginative, it's receiving, it's the empty space in every sense of that term. And so this is actually heart-driven or purpose-driven. So this is where the answers come from in to out rather than out to in. So this is basically the fundamental difference between externally validated versus internally sourced. So it was interesting seeing your answers to the two sets of words because both ways are equally valid. It's just that we don't often see the second set of words or recognize them as like a valid way of being. And so oftentimes people feel like a sigh when that avenue is available to you as well. So the thing is, each of us embody both our masculine and feminine sides all the time, but because we only see the masculine side in leadership, so we think, first of all, like we think it becomes an excess in that direction, but also, so now when we consciously embody the feminine side at the same time, we become magnetic. And this is true with the men I work with as well. Because whenever that balance takes place is when you suddenly become magnetic to potential stakeholders. So the major insight that I had in my journey was that instead of pushing harder and grinding harder, which is what led me to my entire physical, mental, emotional breakdown and burnout, which was just focused on that external validation piece. And when people were not seeing me, I was finished, right? I realized that I should let myself be seen and heard. So an example of this is that I was actually ended up on a reality show in India about social entrepreneurs, and I had to pitch live to 10 million people across the country about sex ed. So this was like very cringy for me, if you can imagine talking about such a taboo topic on national TV. But I also knew this was going to be my greatest like stepping up challenge because I really had to embody my message and stand in it and say this is what I believe in. And doing that and letting myself be seen and received by people in that way allowed people like Tata and others to find me and say, yeah, I resonate with that message too, let's work together. And it actually ended up being much more expedient than me creating spreadsheets of 1,000 cold leads and like trying to get them to understand what I was doing. Oops. So those are the 3 principles of goddess leadership. My vision chose me, I created a container, and then I let myself be seen and heard fully. So what we're going to do next, we're going to apply this to your pitch decks. First, we're going to take a little break. So we're going to take a really short break now to kind of do a real quick reflection. So I would love to, and if you want, you can like raise your hands, or we can just go, actually we can just go in a row, which would be easiest. If you just want to say like, if there's any immediate thoughts or reflections that are coming to mind, and just tell us like who you are and what you're working on. And if you're not working on like a venture or something, if there's anything you're passionate about birthing into the world. So let's do like a quick round.
Sure. My name is Amaya. I have an Ayurvedic herbal supplements startup. I believe that everyone should have access to natural healthcare remedies without side effects. Something I was experiencing from watching this was like, yeah, that sounds awesome. How do I actually make that happen and actualize it in a world that's so masculine, push oriented? And I'm excited to learn more. Thank you.
So I'm a salesperson now, I'm business development, and I hate the idea of coming off as a salesperson. And so I try to lead more with the feminine side, or what you said on the second slide, because I hated everything on the first slide. And it's true, you become a magnet. So, you know, learning how to be more of like listening and authentic, and that the energy comes to you, kind of thing.
Oh, I'm Kareem, and I have a sustainable company that leans towards solar and all things solar plus. And we're basically, I'm from Haiti, and I'm really close to nature, and basically would like to encourage others to teach others, to utilize the I guess the tools accessible to us to be able to be more better steward and basically to conserve ourselves. So I'm working on an app right now that is going to help folks automate the ask of their utility companies that constantly request us to manage our energies between X and X hours. And some of us fail because we forget and so forth, and to kind of like help automate that system, which we all going to be benefiting from. So, yeah.
Sing a round of applause.
Free time. Friends are here.
Hello everyone, I'm Eunice. I'm actually Dr. Eunice Garza. I've always been in really masculine spaces. I was a tomboy, I played soccer. I'm an archaeologist, that's an old boys club. In real estate, most real estate agents are female, but the most successful ones tend to be male. So I would never have thought like this gender dichotomy would work, but I refuse to do hard sales. I refuse to cold call. I refuse to even like force anybody into anything. I just can't be part of that. If they don't want to buy the house, they don't want to buy the house, and they move on. So I'm very interested in this as far as funding and pitching on my next ventures. So thank you.
My name is Cynthia Harrington. I'm founder and COO of Studious Technologies. About 20 million people a year take certifying exams. All are adults and struggle with completing those exams. This idea found me. I was coaching hedge funds, and a CFA candidate said, "Would you help me?" And I did, and realized that it's a very expensive venture to have an in-person tutor. So we have a technological solution that uses AI that the student actually feels like they're working with a tutor because it personalizes the learning journey.
I'm Stephanie Reed. I'm here because I'm actually working with a small digital marketing startup, and very much like this. I'm not a cold caller. I'm definitely a person who likes to solve problems, and kind of just getting here to be better articulate how we're so much, the differences, and then also always on the lookout for starting something of my own.
I'm Sujol Kushal, CEO of a company called Advanced Health Sciences. My vision has always been to change healthcare, and to the point where you don't use devices that are on you or implant them. So I've always had the vision of non-contact devices. So I met some fascinating guys at NASA, and we have a device now that can read your heart rate and respiratory rate without you wearing anything. And the purpose of the device would be to catch these erratic cardiac events that all of us, once you cross the age of 60, will have. And people who can call 911 will have 5 times more chance of surviving a sudden cardiac event than if you didn't know what happened. So the challenge, I think, what I'm really interested in this particular class is looking at different things. I don't know what happened to the funding environment, but I'm slamming my head into a wall every single step, right? And so the question is, what's wrong? Well, what are we doing different? And these are some of the changes, but we're still working into a male-dominated society. That's kind of where the majority of the investors are, right? So, still trying to figure out how to change that game.
Thank you. I'm Heather McClellan. A couple of things. I'm considering raising funds to run an AI governance international conference in partnership with somebody who's well respected in that space. No deck yet, but considering doing that, looking into it. And then I also have my own solopreneur company doing emotional intelligence training, offsite facilitation, and founder executive coaching. And one of the things I like, sort of in alignment with this, like I teach empathy to sales teams, like sometimes like technical salespeople and like large companies. And part of my pitch for that is that there's reliably a 20 to 30% increase in sales when true empathy is present, and there's like various data points on that. So happy to like share the links for that if folks are interested. But like the ways that does work, the like really being attuned versus pushing. And I've also been in very male-dominated spaces and had some strong challenges with that, including being a like solo female wanting to enroll often men who are the decision makers. And there's a thing where it's like if I'm really compelling, do they end up hitting on me? And then can I reject them and still get the contract? Because we'll often be like, we should work together. They're like, ooh, actually. So it's like, so I genuinely have fear of like, oh, if I'm too like magnetic, is that going to happen? So that's something I don't know. I haven't like worked out the magic of ideal calibration, but
Yes, no, not available.
yeah.
Hi everybody, my name's David. Originally come out here to support Green. We came up from San Antonio with another friend who kind of got lost, but was pleasantly surprised by this whole presentation. I'm an independent music producer, and also I've been in B2B sales for the past 6 years for various companies. I'm in the edtech space now, and for myself, in reflection of this presentation, I think about the exuding both the masculine and feminine energy, and I don't struggle with that in my day-to-day and in my networking capacity, but when it comes to my music producer brand, a lot of my clients it's very old school how I get clients now, like we connect, I go to shows, and so I'm thinking about wanting to increase my brand reputation, brand awareness, and most of my clientele are men, and I have female clients here and there. There are so many music in general producing in the engineering space, it's very male dominated, and women just don't feel that comfortable, and then I also want to like not pitch and force and seem abrasive, so I just shy away. I'd like, okay, you don't want to work with me, I don't want to force anything, but I want to change that, and so this presentation has had me reflect on a bunch of that.
Hey, I'm Kellis. I am a neurodivergent school brain who's been an engineer in a very male-dominated tech industry for too long, and now that I'm a mother, I have completely changed my identity and my pursuits to create a startup in support of family connectivity and family wellness. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on your perspective, I think that historically that has fallen squarely on female shoulders, and I hope through education and through community to see that shift, because it can definitely be more of an and. Similar to what you shared, David, but perhaps the inverse of it. I feel like there are a lot of men who shy away from having these kinds of conversations, and I don't want to push and say, but no, you really need to. I swear, the statistics are there. This will improve your marriage. This will improve your relationships with your children and your spouse and all the things. I feel like there is such a compelling argument, data-driven engineering left brain argument around this thing, and it's a struggle to bridge the female and male energy in conversation with both in the same conversation. So I'm really excited to learn a little bit more about how to actively bring that bridge to every single one of the conversations that I have with families.
Hi, my name is Leandro. I'm the founder of Pearl. Pearl is a dating app that understands you. My goal is to basically just create relationships around the world, starting with dating, then into friendships. And really what interested me with this event was to get a lot of different perspectives, learn different ways to like pitch, to share my message, all that sorts of stuff.
Cool. Hey everyone, I'm Daniel. Sorry I'm late. Thanks for having me on the live. It starts at 2:30. Don't know what I missed, but I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm the founder of Hey Hire. We're the easiest way to hire local talent. We work with service industry, restaurants, bars, cafes, and I'm basically leading the operation in terms of sales. So it's a lot of talking to decision makers. Most of the decision makers we talk to are HR people, and a good amount of that is women, females, and so on. And I haven't had a lot of experience in that in my sales career in the past. So at this point, I'm really just trying to absorb whatever I can, wherever I can, making connections. So thanks for having me.
Thanks everyone. Wow, that was amazing. It's so amazing hearing what everyone is doing and like your reflection. So I'm gonna go into how these principles apply to like a standard 10 to 12 slide pitch deck. I generally work with pre-seed founders, sometimes seed, but basically at that stage where your vision and your story is really what's gonna attract that investment. It's like you don't have increasing monthly recurring revenue that's like 3xing, right? You have your vision of how you want to disrupt your industry. I also want to, this is an interesting moment in time, and actually I wanted to add something new right now. I was inspired to share, which I normally don't talk about this, but I think we're reaching a very, very, very interesting moment in venture capital. And 2023 has been a heck of a year, and now at this point, like we're like so far, like 75% way through it, I feel like I can almost like share this, which has been brewing for a few years. Which is that most of the founders that I work with in the past, I would say a few years ago, you could knock on a few VC doors, you'd get meetings, you might get some funding. And I feel like there's this whole divergence happening now where for so many of my founders, it's like closed doors on the VC side. And I have a few thoughts around this and a few thoughts about this. So, where do I start? So basically, the VC system itself isn't working so well. In terms of like one company out of your portfolio is going to be a unicorn and you're expecting the rest to not succeed, right? That's first of all like not a great model for founders who are putting your blood, sweat, and tears into building a venture. You need to be working, you need to basically be able to exit at any level. Like if you want to build a $100 million business, you should be able to. But within the existing VC model, that's not an option because most VCs are looking for unicorn or bust, right? And so within this paradigm of VC of unicorn or bust, you're going to get VCs across the full spectrums of values alignment to non-alignment. You're going to have like the super, like what you would think of as like old paradigm ones that like, you know, are just like unicorn or bust. But then you're going to have the ones that are like, you know what, we're still going to support you to reach some level of exit, even if you're not a unicorn. And they're actually in there to like help the founder, and they care about you. And so it's just become more relevant than ever to vet your investor before you bring them on your cap table, because if they're all the way on the old side, they could suggest things to you that are actually like bad for your business because they're just like artificially trying to drive growth to make you into this unicorn, which has happened to founders I've talked to, like who graduated from places like YC or like, you know, have gotten into arrangements like that. However, then I also have founders who have raised, I have a founder who just 2 weeks ago closed a $7 million seed round. And 2023 has been the driest year for startup funding so far. She raised $7 million to transform health insurance for Americans. So I truly believe that if you're creating something that is fundamentally important for the shift that we're going through in our industries and the world, there are still investors out there who will see your vision and fund you, and that you may actually still fit into the VC model, right? And so it's up to you to decide, like, is the VC model right for me or not? And if so, then just be really discerning about who you bring on, and like you can raise all the money and do it, right? But it's supposed to happen in your timing, is what I feel strongly, is that like tuning out like the market noise and centering more on like your product, your vision, your timing, and getting aligned stakeholders for you. Okay, so then the second thing I want to share, like outside of the VC model, a lot of people are just raising checks from angels. So if you're like, I don't know if I want to commit to VC model, you can still raise a pre-seed round on a safe and just from angels. And you can decide later if you want to take an institutional round at seed, which is what a lot of people are doing as well. So those are like my 2 cents on like the weirdness of the moment. So let's apply the principles to your pitch deck. So number 1, my vision shows me. So I get a lot of decks coming across my table, and almost in every case, founders are not embracing the fullness of your big vision and purpose and your uniqueness as the founder. So these are 2-sided things. It's like, what is happening in your industry where your thing perfectly fits into that and you're contributing to the shift that's already happening? And number 2, what is your unique lived experience that's led you to birth this? Because nobody can do it like you can. Like when you have lived through an experience in your life, it lives in your body, it's part of you. Somebody else can take your idea, or they can take like the words, but it's not gonna have the same impact. So how do you amplify that? So in the first few slides of your deck, your problem opportunity slide, I actually have 2 slides that I put after the problem opportunity slide, which is like a mini user story and like 1 line about you. And that really forms the backbone of your connection to this potential stakeholder. So these 3 slides should answer why this, why now, and why you. So the big picture problem opportunity slide, you should really get down into like what's happening. So if it's healthcare, it's like, look, our hospitals are in crisis. Like there's there's a complete shortage of staff, which has never been seen before until and it's getting worse in the last 5 years. So I want you to get down to the true crack or the true crisis point in your industry. In education, it could be AI. It could be something that's literally going to change the way that people heal or work or live or whatever it is in your industry. And I want you to see like, how is your solution going to be a lever to shift people into addressing this problem? And then telling the user story up front helps us. Most people you talk to, like 90%, won't have experienced the problem that you're stating. So it's like, you got me with the big problem, but I still don't empathize with it. It's different me knowing it and me actually caring about it. And the only way I'm going to empathize with it is if you tell me the story of somebody inside this system who's suffering. So tell me that story in a few, at a level of detail. And then I usually say, and I experienced this. So with my 10 or 15 years of experience in this industry, I literally saw that exact same thing playing out time and again. And with my degree from wherever, or with my experience from wherever, I decided to tackle this. So in one swoop, you're not only sharing that you understand the problem intimately, but you're also showcasing your expertise in a line. This is hard sometimes for founders to do, to talk about yourself. Or sometimes if you have lived a very painful experience, it can be hard to share. But the key is to tie it in briefly but precisely, where you're like, look, this is literally me, I've lived through this, this is why I can fix this. Okay, number 2, I create a container for others to join me in my vision. Okay, so this is what almost every founder does, which you don't want to do. You get a piece of negative feedback and you're like, just kidding, I'm not fundraising anymore, I'm not ready. Or you change the amount that you're fundraising based on your responses, you change your check size. And so you have to first decide in your heart, okay, I need 500K, but I don't have the capacity to take in 10K checks. So I need 150 to 250K checks, and I need a couple of aligned stakeholders. Right? So if that's the container you're holding, and a bunch of 5K people said no, that doesn't mean the 150K people are going to say no, right? It's all about alignment. It's stick to the plan, and try to hold it for a certain amount of time before you pivot or change it. And please don't change your pitch deck endlessly based on feedback. Again, your pitch deck is a reflection of your foundation. So it's like the story you're telling yourself and the story you're telling other people. Every time like you get a piece of feedback and you change your pitch deck, you're changing the story you're telling yourself as well. And that creates like, then you show up with unstable energy to conversations. If people ask you something that's not in your deck, just answer it. Like, you don't necessarily have to go change your deck, right? Or like if you get the same thing consistently, like why don't you have a go-to-market slide or something that's glaring, then go and fix it, right? But I say take one round of feedback, make the changes, and then hold it at that level. And you should always be building your deck from the perspective of the next round that you've already raised. So if you're raising a seed, you're writing it as if you're already at that level. So you're like mentally coming from that place and telling your story, and then assuming you'll hit it without embellishment. So codify the next level version of your venture once, and then hold that container. And then for number 3, what I see often with founders is the false belief that people won't get your message, they won't understand what you're building. This industry is very complex, and so it'll take me like an hour to even explain what's happening in this industry. And also that you don't have the skills or network to fundraise. These are false, because you'd be really surprised, even in the most complex of industries, for example, like health insurance or something, it's all about really getting down and crafting that narrative and making it concise where it's connective to humans. Like somebody doesn't have to understand like the ins and outs if they understand that you understand the customer and that you're the person to execute on this. So in terms of being seen and heard, like I always say, shut off your mind and take action consistently. Like do consistent outreach and then let the right people come back to you. Don't do the thing where you like reach out to a few people like hesitantly and then like none of them respond and then you're discouraged and then you don't do more outreach. This is a warrior mentality. So it's like shut off your mind, take the action, turn it off, don't think about it, then let the right people come back to you in the right timing, which is always what happens. And don't get hung up on like one person, like, oh yeah, there was that one person who said they're gonna give me a check and they're just dragging and they're not getting back to me. And now your whole energy is dragging because of this one person. It's your job to stay in your frequency. If that person's dragging, there could be 5 other people who are ready to write you a check, but you're not even seeing them because you're hung up on that one person, right? So that's where it's about holding a container. Like, you should be completely agnostic about if it's this person or that person or that person. I'm just over here holding the container. So, yeah. And then celebrate every single person who joins you, even if you haven't hit your target yet. So celebrate the creation over the outcomes. Oh, so yeah, I'm gonna go into a couple of case studies, but any like questions or thoughts based on if there's any questions.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
So, one recurring thing that happens to me is when I do my pitch, people are, they just look at me, I'm a female and I'm in a space where it's literally 99% male. And so I get this question of asking me exactly how I'm gonna do what I'm gonna be doing. Like the secret sauce. How are you gonna? Because they can't fathom, so they're like looking at me sideways, like, how are you actually gonna do that? And so this hit me so many times. I'm like, I have to figure out a democratic way to explain it to them without without being defensive or just giving them all that information.
Yeah. The how is really interesting because sometimes people default to the how because it's like the other things haven't been addressed. Like if you've captured their imagination with the market and with the pain point, the story, and then you have like something you can show. Like I've created an app, or I've done these user interviews. Always take them back to the one or two evidence points you do have. And it's perfectly fine to say like, and we're gonna figure it out, but do you believe in me, right?
Right.
So you don't have to answer that, like you don't have to go down all of their rabbit holes either.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna tell you a couple of case studies, and then we can do a little bit of workshopping, pitches, and more questions. But I wanted to share like.
I had one question.
Yeah.
So you brought up the point earlier that, don't keep changing your deck with everyone's comment,
Yeah.
right? And I change my deck with everyone has a different comment. And you gotta,
Don't do that.
You're learning something in the process, right? But the problem, I think, is you've got these two different groups. The old guys kind of feedback, right? Who lived through the 90s and this is how you pitch it.
Yeah.
And then you're getting, current day sort of things where you gotta connect with people, you gotta have a storybook approach, and so those are some of the things that are changing. But it's, your audience is sometimes the old guys and sometimes the young guys, so it's very hard to figure out how to play the deck game.
Yeah. So, what is the major difference you'd say between the old guys and the young guys?
Well, as you said, in the 90s, we raised money without a problem. I came here, knocked on Sand Hills Road, they said, yeah, we're not interested. Give me a reference to the next guy. Rejection was okay as long as someone got me to another point.
Yeah.
Now you don't even get that. The access is gone. The VCs are only looking for companies that already have $1 million of revenue. So what happened before? That's the gap that we all have, right? So it's the angels. The question is how to connect with them.
Right.
That excites them, because if you can't, it doesn't matter what I say.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say that so I'd say that if the angel is your target, forget about the old paradigm people and tailor a message that speaks to that person. If you have one foot on each side, you're gonna end up nowhere.
Yes,
right?
that's true.
And then when you tell the story to someone, to an angel, it's about all of these things that I talked about. It's like the industry, what's happening, showcasing your expertise, and showing really don't tell, show. Because they probably don't know your industry. Like they're not like a health tech investor where they see like tons of deals.
I want to add something to that. I feel like with angels specifically, it's going to be easier to find people who can, because it could be someone who was at a company that comes from the same market or same industry, and now they're doing angel investing. So I feel like just being very specific with who you're targeting, you can potentially find people who might already be aware of the problem you're trying to solve and might be more interested because of that.
Yeah. So I want to speak a little bit to the power of packaging your story in this way, of really letting the vision and your personal story be seen and heard in the process and coming from this perspective. So as you know, I run a coaching accelerator. My brand is called the Female Founders Lab. So I take founders on a 3-month journey of kind of just like realigning the deck in a way that is in integrity to the vision and can communicate it precisely to stakeholders. So for example, this is Morgan Hewitt, founder of Options MD. She joined me for my accelerator in 2020. And when she came in, she had a vision for a mental health medication data platform where people would have democratized access to seeing the side effects of all the drugs, comparing them side to side, and have a community towards recovery. She needed capital to even get that data and build the product. So she was pretty much starting with no pilot, but with a vision and with a background from Facebook, as it was called at the time. Healthcare data team. So she was no product, no pilots, building a mental health medication platform. And I helped her realign her pitch to what's happening in the industry and her own personal story with a family member who is struggling with mental health, and how her vision for becoming the WebMD for mental health. And in fact, in 4 weeks, she raised $400,000 from angels. And in that same time frame, after we revamped her pitch, she applied to and got into Techstars. And 6 months later, she raised a $1.2 million seed round. So she became one of 49 Black women in the entire world to raise more than $1 million in 2021. So this was really, and by now they've raised $4 million. So they did a round after that as well. I love this story because she was like all of us, like when she joined. It's like, I need capital to even build this thing. And also the stats, the stats are scary. Like 2% of venture funding goes to women, 0.0 something goes to Black founders. But at the end of the day, like what I was saying before, is like your journey will lead you to the capital you need if you're willing to stand in your voice. I also want to tell you a story about Stacy from Ventour, who's transforming health insurance. When she joined the accelerator, she had 30 users in a basic pilot. And we did like the industry vision thing, and she got, that month, she got a partnership with 2 of the biggest healthcare organizations in California, covered California and Kaiser Permanente, and she did raise her $550K pre-seed round a few months later, and she ended the year with $1 million in ARR. And in fact, she actually just raised she's the one who raised $7 million 2 weeks ago for her mission. So the stuff works, and there's a lot of money out there in the universe. It's just about stepping into your power and like kind of navigating it and finding the way to do it. So yeah, let's create the future. Thank you. So why don't we take like a 1-minute break and then regroup. We can do whatever you want. We have like half an hour, so we can do some workshop, like pitch workshopping if you want. But yeah, let's take like a 2-minute break, bathroom break, and then we can reconvene for whoever wants to do that. I am, yeah. I work out of here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so basically, the big one is 5K, and that's basically like,
My friend Maddie
she calls it daily a week, and that's like the full thing, and then I have like a smaller package.
So, like, find them on FIN.
Yeah. That'd be awesome. I'm gonna send all of you guys a call for like a link for a call. Happy to try.
And I had never seen one like it, and then I saw it with the training of like 40 years on sales somewhere that, or like a site.
So I mentioned the other day.
First floor.
Right.
Forgot the name of the event.
Do you do internships as well?
We do, but we have 3 right now that are doing like all of our marketing, social media, stuff like that.
How did you find them?
LinkedIn.
Oh, LinkedIn?
Yeah, it was pretty easy, honestly. Just posted the job, and I had like 100 candidates within a week.
Oh wow.
Yeah, all local, UT, which is what we're looking for.
Oh nice.
Yeah.
I want to see what you posted, because I need a couple of them.
Are you looking for interns?
Yes. What is it in you?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn worked pretty well for me. I didn't even like pay anything to boost it. If you look at our company, Hey Hire, if you scroll down, you're eventually going to see the job post that we posted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's Hey Hire, HEYHIRE. If you look for it on LinkedIn, scroll down. It was around, I want to say like July, maybe June when we posted it.
Mm-hmm.
So you should find it. If you want, send me a connection, and I can maybe find it and send you a link. You did?
I thought I sent you a connection from the last time, because I was getting everybody's.
Okay, you have a fascinating story.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's very impressive. But the learning is still, I'm working on reach another book that someone has talked about, Reach Anything by Howard Glass. And so part of his strategy was to work at the initial pitch had to work at the Crockway, message across, that kind of thing. So what we do is that we put these pieces together and analyze all this data.
Yeah.
So fold it in.
They're
They
doing
must
good,
start
they're
where
doing
we
good.
finish
We
the
have,
analysis, but the
Every
person
single
coming in
place
is not even at that level.
Exactly.
In San Antonio,
So-
there's a higher expense.
So that's kind of the reason I keep changing the
And
pitch,
single
because I'm
lot-
trying to get that initial first
Oh,
one.
are you from San Antonio?
Yeah.
Yeah, I live in
Get
San
that.
Antonio, so,
Yeah, happy to chat and like.
I wanna chat more
your
than
deck and
this.
Yeah.
San Antonio is better for me.
Especially for have like my new coaching package is like 1 month, and then I have a smaller one, just like deep dive and stuff as well.
That's all right. Every
Yeah.
restaurant
Happy
is
to
higher.
chat.
Every restaurant is
Yeah.
Well, and,
Healthcare
But yeah,
is an
I
interesting
definitely wanna
space.
chat.
It is interesting,
Oh, okay.
but mired, we do something mired in a fair amount of slowness.
our platform is called.
Speed is very hard, and then one of the challenges, like, we need pilots to be able to validate something.
Using AI.
And I'm amazed that anyone will actually spend any time on it.
Basically a layer of.
Because they're all busy, and so how could you get a nurse to do some validation for you with your patient?
Now for.
I don't, so it's all very connection driven,
Yeah.
not,
You have to maybe, if you have contact with like a health system, even,
Yeah.
English out, but doing one by one is hard.
And then we don't
Yeah.
need tutors.
Right.
so we just got, we're doing a pilot with Pan Health, which is, we've got about 16 clinic hospitals, about 50 beds,
Yeah.
starting with the first one.
Okay,
But
so
we've been
that's-
slugging through this for a year and a half, started today.
Yeah, I think this is like, it's like this,
Yes,
pilot
exactly. You
scale.
had to do, you got it, you gotta learn this.
Once you get to a
Here's
point,
five
you get
people you can go learn it from. It costs like
Correct.
sometimes 10, 15 bucks. It's not,
So, who wants to workshop your pitch? Or what do you guys want to do? What would be helpful for you right now?
Well, I can't even get my pitch without finishing it, I have it posted in Google.
I was thinking like 60-second pitches.
Oh, I can do that next week.
Yeah,
We've done, oh wow.
I can time you.
Do you have a business elevator? That should help us workshop that. You have a business plan?
Okay, so start on the pitch. So big problem, so that's like slide 1 from the pitch deck.
So we're gonna speak it instead of, oh, we're gonna connect our pitch and speak it?
No, just speaking.
Oh,
It
okay.
can come up and in a few sentences, you can take us through the journey of maybe a big statistic about your industry, like a numbers-based thing that tells us what the big problem is.
Okay.
A real quick user story of like a pain point of somebody who experienced it, and then your solution in like, like basically your value proposition, which should be like maybe one sentence. And it's okay, it doesn't have to be perfect, but that's a flow that you can think of as like one sentence, a couple sentences for each. Yeah. And I'll say that even though 60 seconds, like don't rush. No matter how much time you have, you should always speak slowly. Just say less. Oh, and so before we jump into this, a few people are asking. So my coaching packages, so basically the 3-month accelerator, I offer almost like unlimited calls for founders. We usually talk like we start with a 90-minute deep dive, and I help you create the golden narrative for your whole deck. And then you spend a few weeks integrating that into your deck, and then we come up with a strategy for outreach, and I'm in your corner for 3 months through your whole fundraising process. The 3-month accelerator is $5K. I do offer half accelerator, like 6 weeks, if you want a shorter timeline. And then I also offer just like an intro, like 2.5-hour deep dive. So for people, if you're cash strapped or you just want me to like look at your deck and help you revamp it, and that one is $460. And so I'm offering like a 30-minute call to anyone who came to the workshop. So happy to chat after if anyone's interested in working together. Great. So who's gonna pitch?
I'll pitch.
Yay! I'll time you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Sujot Ghoshal, CEO of Advanced Health Sensors. Do you know that 80% of people that come to an ICU did not know that they have a cardiac problem? And the fact is that if they didn't call 911, the people who call 911 had 5 times better chance of surviving a cardiac arrest. So the problem is that we just don't know when you have what's called a sudden cardiac event. And the only way to solve that problem is through continuous monitoring, because we don't know what happens. So we've come up with this genius, unique product that can monitor your heart rate. It's like an alarm clock for your heart, and it sends out a message every time you detect something went wrong. And so our business is to apply this both in the home and in skilled nursing homes, where the market for remote patient monitoring is close to $31 billion. And save Medicare the readmission cost, which runs at close to $52 billion today. Thank you.
Thank you. My real quick piece of advice for you is that because you don't have your product with you, being able to summarize like 3 quick bullet points of the value of it / its competitive advantage.
Okay.
Thank you.
But how many seconds did I take?
Oh, 57, you're
Oh,
right
okay.
on.
Oh, wow, that's pretty good.
I was already running over.
May I share something?
Yeah.
I thought the statistics were so interesting, like the 80% or something, and I just, like, that part was awesome, but I think could have been really powerful is making it a personal story.
Yes, that's
like
true.
somehow tying it, like, you know that time when you got that call from your grandpa, granny's in the hospital because she had a heart attack? Well, using this technology, that could have been prevented.
Right.
And let me tell you how.
That's a good point,
Like that
yeah.
kind of,
Yeah.
because the data is really compelling.
And I have a lot of examples actually.
You should
There's
do
so
it.
many that
Yeah.
in my family itself. So
I think
Perfect.
the art of story, we as humans respond so much more to a story. And if you want to, I think it's a really great way to balance both the female and male energy in a pitch, to start with a story, connect,
right.
and then follow up with the stat.
Okay, that's better.
Because it
yeah.
personalizes
Because
the
it gets
stat,
the
and then it
connection,
drives you like, oh, 80%, what? So it can be a really great way to do both.
Right. Good idea.
What a beautiful pitch. 57 seconds. Let's go.
Anyone else?
You.
I'll do it, I'll do it.
I don't know, do you want me in the front or can I stand up here? Okay. Well, hello. My partner is raising money to reimagine cricket. Everybody wants a hot cricket player boyfriend, right? I know, me too. But what he's doing is kind of player-owned fields because of global warming. It's harder to train year-round, and cricket is a huge market throughout the world. There's a new cricket club in Dallas, and he has a pitch deck and a website and is moving forward, and I just wanted to see how I could help here in Texas, which is a huge untapped cricket market. There we go.
Thank you.
30 seconds. Please, there you go.
How many seconds was
That was 37 seconds.
Oh, wow, that's really
You said that, so it's his idea that you're pitching.
Mm-hmm.
It would be cool to have just like a one-liner about his credentials or something, since it's not you.
Yes,
That'd be
exactly.
cool.
Lifelong cricket player.
Who's next?
I think I'll do it.
Yeah.
Keep in mind that English is not my first language, so if I kind of stick, just bear with me. So I'm Karine, I own a solar company, and just on my way over today, I had to move an appointment with a lady who has solar on her house and it's not currently working. And so she basically has the solar payment and the utility full-on payment. And we are experiencing currently a huge effect with energy consumption crisis. That's why we have global warming and so forth and so on. So that's a huge problem, and it's the solution which we are helping the new generation manage their energy consumption so that we can reduce
your energy, your footprint at a personal level. So I call the energy crisis a global issue with a personal solution. So we can solve that ourselves.
Thank you. That was exactly a minute.
But did I get anything across?
Yeah, you know, it would be cool if there was any sort of a number you had around solar's role in the energy crisis or like in global warming. So you have like bigger numbers, and then like what's the role of solar, and then what's the role for you? Like what could you do? So kind of tying it in with like numbers could be grounding. Like, so it's like, solar energy can solve this much of carbon emissions or something versus, and then it's like, and then you could personally save this much money while making this much impact or something.
Okay.
Some people, so it's like you're saying you're empowering us, so like show us how.
Okay.
Alright. Yeah. Good job.
I have a clarifying question before I try and pitch. I have multi-phases of this business rollout. The first phase is around a pitch, or excuse me, around an app that I'm currently pitching right now. So would it make most sense to do where I'm at, or the big vision for all the way up through phase 3?
Yeah, give us the big vision as like your first sentence, and then dive into your app.
Okay.
So you can bridge it somehow.